So good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the participants for today's webinar. I would like to take this opportunity to present today's topic, that is business potential for Indian space companies in Toulouse, France. Before we proceed with the presentation, I would like to introduce you to my colleague from Invest in Toulouse, Ms. Kathleen Champion, who is Economic Development Manager at Invest in Toulouse. Now, we will give a short presentation regarding Invest in Toulouse. So, talking about the business potential for the Indian space companies in Toulouse, France. Now, in this presentation, we will have a glimpse about France, then India and France bilateral relations, then space industry in Toulouse, trade fairs, exhibitions, associations, and cluster in Toulouse, then steps to be successful in Toulouse, form of expansions, and in the end, we will have a question and answer session. I would like to tell all the participants that if you have some questions, you can feel free to put it into the question and answer box. Okay, so these are today's speaker, Ms. Kathleen Champion, who is from Economic Development, who is Economic Development Manager for Sourcing and Market Analytics for Invest in Toulouse, and myself, I am Apurva Chakradev. I am Assistant Manager at International Ventures in Crescendo Worldwide. So we will have a glimpse about the France. So as everyone knows that the capital of France is Paris, and it covers an area of 64 million kilometers square, has a population of 65 millions. Talking about GDP, they have a GDP of 2.551 trillion USD and per capita income of 45,454 USD. Then some more information about the France. It is the second largest economy in the Europe and sixth largest in the world. It is the third largest market in European Union and has a 65 million consumers. It is world's most popular tourist destination. So talking about France major exports destination, other countries, I'll rather say, have given 37% of share, which is followed by Germany, which has a 16% of share, which is followed by Spain, USA, Italy, United Kingdom, Belgium by 7%. And after that, there is Netherlands, China, and Switzerland, which holds a share of 4%. So top sectors by foreign direct investment in France, construction contributes roughly about 36%, then finance and insurance roughly about 23%, real estate 17%, trade and maintenance 12%, manufacturing 5%, and other sectors are consist of 7%. Then we will have a glimpse about India and France bilateral relations. So till the date, India and France has a bilateral trade of 13.56 billion USD, which has been rose by 0.60%. So goods export and goods import have a considerable amount, which is of 7.28 billion and 6.25 billion, which has been raised by 4%. Indian export of services is at 2.95 billion USD from January to December 2020. Then these are some of the compositions of India and France trade in services. On the left hand side, you can see the major categories of the services, and on the right hand side, you can have a glimpse of India's export to France and India's export from France, where we have manufacturing services supplied by physical inputs helped by the third parties, then maintenance and repair services and transport, and the list will go on. So talking about the sector-wise distribution of Indian companies into the France, there is 24% of companies from information technology, 9.5% of health and pharmaceutical, 9.5% of industrial components, 7.5% of agriculture and food processing, then 7.5% for automobile and its components. And then we will move forward with engineering, which also holds a 7.5%. Metallurgy also holds 7.5%. Then power and transportation holds 3.7%. In the end, We will go on aviation, which holds 6.3%, electronics 5%, and remaining holds a share of 12.6%. So we will go to the main topic of today's webinar, that is space industry in Toulouse. So space sector in Toulouse, we will have a brief of that. Toulouse has become the hotspot for over 400 space companies. The city also boasts a private public incubator, namely Aerospace Valley, which is a competitiveness cluster for aeronautics. In March 2018, the Aerospace Valley's competitiveness cluster founded New Space Factory, a group of French SMEs that is with complementary skills and extensive experience in the space sector. The Toulouse Space Center is the research and development center for National Center of Space Studies. Then we will go in detail regarding the space sector in the Toulouse. So district of 56 hectares dedicated to innovation in aerospace and space companies, which is a home of Airbus and other aerospace companies and the space companies as well. Toulouse is the home of Air Museum, which has over 40 model aircrafts, which is connected by 2 subway stations of the future third metro line. Then it covers 1,600 square meter public incubators and 9,600 square meter of offices for innovative companies. Then these are some of the major players in the space industry in Toulouse, which are like Airbus, Rockwell Collins, then Safran, Thales Alenia, then Airbus Defence and Space, ATR. Then the major incentives into the space sector. So there will be opportunities into the major sectors like marketing and sales, then research and development, parts manufacturing and subsystem assembly, system assembly, final integration, and aftermarket service as well. So we will talk about the trade fairs and exhibitions in Toulouse. So you can have a glimpse of that as well, where there are some of the trade fairs and exhibitions in Toulouse that are Aerospace Technology Week, then Toulouse Space Show 2022, ASD Days 2021. Then moving ahead with the associations and clusters into the Toulouse. So these are some of the clusters, that is Aerospace Valley, Natural High of French Institute of Aeronautics and Space. Then we will have a look at the steps to be successful in Toulouse. So considering the first step, which is knowing yourself, which is nothing but understanding your manufacturing and infrastructure capabilities, product sustainability for France, product approval and certification, allocating to the resource and budget. The second step is considering of the knowledge of the market, where you have to gather some knowledge regarding the market from the France, understanding the price structure in the France, knowing the import statistic, market trends, customers need, competitor, logistic cost, import duties. These will be the steps which include into the second step, that is the knowing of your market. Then we will jump to the third step, which is preparing yourself, that is defining the strategy, roadmap, budget and resources, preparing market material in French language, and in the end the changes in the products as per the French standard. The fourth and final step will be approaching the customer, identifying the potential customer, approaching to the relevant associations and clusters, attending trade fairs and conferences, using the social media for update digital lead generation. Okay, so now we will jump to the forms of expansion in Toulouse. So forms of expansion in Toulouse is considering of subsidiary formation, then sales office, warehouse and distribution center, greenfield and brownfield investment, and in the end, the strategic alliance or partnership. So you should go to the poll questions, which will emit on your screen. I will request all the participants to answer all the questions. I hope the screen is visible to all the participants. I request all the participants to go through the polls list and answer the question as soon as possible. So from the polls, I could see that many of companies have received the RFQs or something like that from the Toulouse. Then many of the companies have their expansion plans in Toulouse. Then many of participants have visited or participated into the international exhibitions as well. And it's good to know from you that you see Toulouse, France as a strategic location to serve Europe, Middle East, Asian and African market as well. So we have just left with a single minute. So I will request all the participants to participate and answer the polls questions so that we can get to know about the interest and the area or scope of work with the company. So I'll request all of the participants to register their answers into the poll. Okay, so now I would like to invite Ms. Kathleen Champion to give the glimpse about the ecosystem and space industry in the Toulouse.
Hi, thank you guys so much. Just a quick side note, I also have my colleague Charlotte Voisin who is here. So she will be helping me do the presentation today. As Crescendo already explained, I'm the Economic Development Manager for the City of Toulouse with Invest in Toulouse. And Charlotte is our space industry expert, so that's why she's here today. We will both be presenting to you opportunities for development in Toulouse with a focus on aerospace, new space, R&D, any project you may have in the space sector for Europe. So I'm going to share my screen now and hopefully, oops, you can see it too. Is it okay? Oops, not quite. Duplicate. Is it okay? Can everybody see? I think it's good. And I'm just going to turn off my camera and hide the window so that it's not blocking the presentation for everybody on your side. So let me just do that really quickly. Up. All right, great. So thank you guys for being here today. As I said, we are going to go over why Toulouse is Europe's space capital. Up. There it goes. So before delving into space opportunities specifically, it is important to show you where Toulouse is located and why it's a strategic location geographically. So in terms of accessibility by plane, it's pretty simple. There are flights from Paris, both Charles de Gaulle and Orly. This is every 20 minutes. This is important to note as well that this is the most frequented flight in Europe. We're bringing in 2.3 million passengers a year. By train, it's also accessible. You can have either a 4-hour train ride from Paris, or there's a train that departs from Barcelona, and it's about 3 hours. And then coming from India, you can see we have several direct flights to Paris, and then you can hop on the flight from Paris to Toulouse every 20 minutes. In order to truly understand where Toulouse fits in terms of business opportunities, I think it's really important that we take a look at our standings on a global scale, or on a European scale, excuse me. So in 2019, for example, France attracted more FDI projects than any other European country. That puts it ahead of both the UK and Germany. So in numbers, what does this look like specifically? Investment had gone up 17%. It gained 1,197 new projects in that year alone. And then in Europe, the top 3 FDI sectors were digital with a 19% market share, business services at 12% market share, and transportation manufacturers and suppliers that had a 7% market share. Though in terms of the jobs that were created from FDI, it is transportation manufacturers and suppliers that held a 23% of the market share. This makes it first by a long shot ahead of all the other industries. And this, of course, is due largely in part to our strong aerospace presence. As Crescendo had already explained, we are the 4th in France. We are 4th city in France with 1.3 million inhabitants. We are the capital of the Occitanie region in southwest France, and you can see we're just by the Spanish border. So even though we are 4th in terms of population, we are first in several categories. The first of that being net job creation, and that has been the case for the past 9 years. We are also first in economic growth. We are first in R&D investments at 5 billion euro a year. And we are also first in talent retention. So what that means is we are the first city in France in terms of the amount of students remaining in the city upon the completion of studies. So that's very important in terms of recruiting highly qualified talent. And then just historically, France has been #1 in Europe in terms of industrial investments for the last decade. And the French region with the most industrial investments is Occitanie, the region of which Toulouse is the capital. And then, yeah, so that's what I just said. And then we also are home to the largest industrial site in France. That's the Aeroparc. In terms of opportunities for collaboration with our local ecosystem, so Crescendo also touched on this as well. Given our industrial ecosystem, you'll see we have a lot of key industrial players who are present here. You see people like Airbus, they have their global headquarters here. Thales, they're #1 in air traffic control. We have the CNES, the French National Space Research Agency. And it's actually here in Toulouse where complete space systems are developed from entry into operational service. And you can see we also have Météo France. So this is France's National Meteorological Service. They're also present in Toulouse. And it's actually our know-how in space and aeronautics that allowed us to develop in the other sectors you see present, such as automotive and mobility and health and cosmetics. And due to this, we were also to bring forth a lot of the major tech integrators, the global ones you see we have in the final column, Capgemini. So their largest account is with Airbus, and they are a key component in digital transformation, not only of our local ecosystem here, but also just industry on a global scale. Our agency does work hand in hand with these companies to better understand their needs and help them find the latest technologies and innovations that they could potentially integrate into their own business structures. And yeah, as previously mentioned, Airbus hosts its global headquarters here, but that's not the only reason we are Europe's aerospace capital. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Charlotte, who will go into detail about our space and aeronautics know-how on the next slide.
Yes, this is my turn. Thank you, Caitlin. So yes, Toulouse is a world civil aviation capital. The city hosts entire aeronautics supply chain from the aircraft manufacturer already mentioned, such as Airbus and ATR, the regional aircraft manufacturer. We also have OEMs, MRO services, and a lot of innovation and engineering specialists. So all of this represents a quarter of all the French research and development in aerospace, and it's conducted here in Toulouse. So the sector represents almost 100,000 jobs. You've got there the numbers of companies associated to this. Can you please switch to the next slide, Caitlin? I'm sorry, I don't have. Yeah, so let's have a look now to the space industry. Thanks to our know-how in aeronautics, the city is able to further expand its knowledge into outer space. So in addition to being a world capital in civil aviation, the city is also Europe space capital. So on the next slide, you have a breakdown of some important figures in space. So I already mentioned that we have a quarter of European workforce, but it's half of the French workforce. So it gives you an idea of how concentrated our space sector is. So of course, this is mainly due to the two big primes, Airbus, the Defense and Space, and Thales Alenia Space. Both of them are designing and manufacturing their satellites here in Toulouse in the huge final assembly lines. And in addition to them, we've got in Toulouse, Toulouse is a home to CNES, the French Space Agency. So to give you just a comparison, CNES is equivalent to ISRO in India. And as an international space agency, CNES is dealing a lot with NASA and JAXA. For example, CNES was very much involved in the Mars 2020 NASA's mission, which has landed the Perseverance rover on Mars last February, only a few months ago. And also we have in Toulouse the French Space Command. So that's a key point, I think, for you. The French Space Command is an internal component of French Air Force and are dealing with the development and the military policy of space. But they also created a division which name is LISA, focused on innovation and how to implement innovation into our space military forces. And in the last few months, I had the opportunity to introduce, for example, two Indian space companies to them. And I think both of them were quite appreciated the technical exchange with the French Army. And in addition to industrial, national players, we also, Toulouse has been selected in early January this year as the NATO Center of Excellence for Space. Let's have a look on what support is done to the space sector. So as a starter, France has the largest space budget in Europe. Just for this year, the CNES has a 2.3 billion euro budget. And factors like this make France the optimal location for any space project for sure. And after, you can find a quick breakdown of CNES budget. And you can see that we are the first contributor to ESA budget. So it's a key point to be mentioned, I think. And we also finance a lot of French programs. So we are investing both in, let's say, the European team, but also France want to have its own space activity and space funding. And lastly, here is a chart that shows France ranking fourth globally. France is number 4 in the world in terms of space budget share per GDP. So let's have a closer look to the new space industry in Toulouse. So not only do we have major players in the space sector, but we also have the entire value chain, thanks to the company listed just here under. So each of them plays an integral part in the equipment manufacturing for new space sector. And before moving forward, there are a few recent success stories that I would like to highlight. The first company is Loft Orbital. The company was created in San Francisco, America, California, and the company is developing satellite sharing services. and are quite successful. They have launched a few weeks ago 2 satellites in orbit, having more than 10 different customers into the 2 satellites, because they are sharing the payload. And Loft Orbital has landed in Toulouse in 2 years ago, in 2019, and they selected Toulouse because of our highly qualified talent here. So you can find easily very skilled resources at the international level. And the location is also used, this American company use Toulouse location as management place for all the Europe and Middle East operations. Second is Kineis. Kineis is a French startup based in Toulouse and born in Toulouse. They have just launched last year a new constellation, and the constellation is focused only in IoT, so Internet of Things. So to do so, they raised in 2020, last year, more than 100 million euro. And the last one, the last example I would like to mention is Exotrail. Exotrail is a French space industrial player born in Paris, but Exotrail decided to create the Research and Development Center here in Toulouse. The reason are the same as Loft Orbital. They want to have access to the pool of talent, the pool of laboratory, a lot of experts, and well, let's say all the design, experimentation, testing, and operating is done in Toulouse for them. Let's have a look very quickly to the testing means that are available in Toulouse. So the local ecosystem can provide plenty of opportunity for testing of satellite equipments or satellites entirely. So we've got various sizes of different equipment, such as clean rooms, vibration test facilities, or TVAC chambers, for example. And this equipment can be rented out for any local company. So it's very convenient for any international company that has set up in Toulouse. So we had a broad look at the industrial activity regarding space. Let's have a look now to the space application, because we have a lot of key players on downstream sector. So let's have a look at this. Toulouse has 3 pillars in space application. The first one is in telecommunications and geopositioning. So Thales and Telespazio are global players regarding this activity. ESSP, I think they are not famous internationally, but they are a key player for the geopositioning, as they are operating the European signal. So the competitor, let's say, to GPS, its name is Galileo, so it's EGNOS signal, and this European geopositioning entity is managed from Toulouse. In the second pillar, you can see all the defense activities. So I already mentioned CNES, the National Space Agency. I already mentioned CDE, which is a French Space Command, and the presence of NATO Center of Excellence, along with a lot of national experts such as ONERA, which is the French Aerospace Laboratory. And the third pillar on the right side is about Earth observation. So of course, Caitlin and Crescendo already mentioned Airbus. We also have Météo France. They are leading players on this field. But I want also to highlight Mercator Océan. Mercator is operating all the monitoring of ocean for Europe. So they are using Copernicus data, and they are monitoring ocean all over the world, and they are interacting a lot with the United Nations to do so. So based on the latest example, Mercator, I would like to mention that Europe has been organizing itself in order to share a large range of images to startups, SMEs, and so Europe has made all the data free access, and to do so, they have created DIAS. So DIAS stands for Data and Information Access Services. And among the 5 European DIAS, 3 of them are based in Toulouse. So I already mentioned Mercator focused on ocean, but we also have Airbus managing SoBlue, and Atos, which is also a global company on IT. And they are operating also a DIAS, which is more focused on agriculture, for example, and its name is Mundi Web Services. So lastly, to sum up, so we talked a lot about Toulouse aerospace figures, and you will find, maybe you could launch it. Thank you, Caitlin. Here's a sum up of the main figures of Toulouse region. It's figure larger than Toulouse city. Of course, it's Toulouse region. So we are representing 124,000 industrial employees. So a third of all the French workforce. Well, you will find also the numbers related to R&D project funded within the area, and all of this is very well supported by the cluster Aerospace Valley. But Caitlin is going to give you more information on this part.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. So now that you've kind of had an idea of what we're doing in our local ecosystem, it would only be fair that we tell you about the innovation campuses. This is an opportunity presented to foreign companies to kind of get their foot in the door to local initiatives. So starting off, as we just brought up the Aerospace Valley cluster. This is, of course, our global competitiveness cluster dedicated to aeronautics and embedded systems. As we've already discussed, there are about 900 members representing 124,000 industrial employees. And within the Aerospace Valley, you will also find the District Acceleration Program. This is opportunities for you to develop your project here in Toulouse through this program at the B612 Innovation Center. You will also find the NET and the Technological Research Institute of Saint-Exupéry are present in this cluster, in this innovation center, and I will present them on the following slides, starting with the IRT Saint-Exupéry Technological Research Institute. So this is one of 8 technological research institutes created by the state as part of the Investments in the Future program. And since its creation, 33 projects have been undertaken. This totals nearly 332 million euros in investments. And the research is carried out under 4 strategic domains, and those are high performance multifunctional materials, more electrical aircraft, systems engineering and modeling, and then intelligent systems and communications. The other important institute that is present in the B612 Innovation Center, this is the NET. So in the past couple of years, France created the initiative 3AI. So this is to invest in digital transformation using artificial intelligence. And this is how the NET, or the Artificial and Natural Intelligence Institute of Toulouse, was developed. It is now designated as France's national campus for hybrid certification. So what does this institute look like exactly in Toulouse? How is it broken down? First off, there are over 200 researchers present from 145 different research labs. You will also see there are over 50 partners. This includes the startups all the way to industrial heavyweights. The co-financing of the project is expected to bring in around 225 million euro in investments. The Institute has projected the creation of 100 startups by 2023. And they're also involved in a project I wanted to bring up called DEAL. So Anity is working with the Technological Research Institute of Saint-Exupéry with partnering labs and institutions in Montreal called CRIAC and IVADO. So the DEAL project is, it stands for Dependable and Explainable Learning in the realm of AI. This is a very important partnership between Europe and North America. So a lot of projects coming in here can use Toulouse as a launch pad into the North American market. In terms of AI in space and aeronautics, some examples of projects could be in the realms of trajectory projections in autopilot, applications in planes, rendering them safer so that the decision-making doesn't fall onto the pilot, and especially in risky situations. When it comes to new space applications, you may think of things in satellites that are navigating in space and avoiding collision with debris. So applications that you can use for onboard decisions in nearly real time to real time in order to keep applications either moving and also to save lives in when it comes to aeronautics. Yes. All right, so in addition to our innovative ecosystem, of course, it's helpful to have this wide variety of key players here, but of course, none of this would have existed had it not been for the highly qualified talent that our local universities produce. So the city does boast 23 different universities and trains over 16,500 students throughout 100 different courses each year in aeronautics in the space sector alone. The city is home to the largest campus in the world dedicated to aeronautics and space engineering. This alone provides the city with over 550 graduated students a year, in addition to over 550 researchers. And just last year, the University of Paul Sabatier was ranked 5th in the world in remote sensing technology in the space sector. This was a ranking performed by the Shanghai Academic. So this makes the university not only first in France in this technology, but also first in Europe. And something we've already touched upon quite a bit, but just so that you're aware, the French state does heavily subsidize all R&D expenditure. So as we have mentioned, we are the top region in R&D expenditure. We are also the first city in terms of students and talent retention, so students remaining in the area upon completion of studies. In terms of research intensity, that looks like 16.2 researchers for every 1,000 employees. So for those who are having a bit of difficulty reading the map, here we have a France with R&D intensity, and then the blue region, this is the one with the most R&D intensity in France, and we are top ranking in Europe. And this is just a quick slide. We won't go into too much detail on this, but just to give you an idea of the levels of support for financing your projects, as I had already said, French state heavily subsidizes all R&D expenditure, but you can see that we also have funding coming in at the regional level, at the state level, but then also at the European level, via entities such as either the Aerospace Valley, so our cluster, or the European Space Agency. And then, yes, a brief overview of R&D tax credits at the state level. So French state will subsidize 30% of all R&D expenses. And one tax credit I really wanted to point out to you guys is the one in the bottom middle, the young PhD tax credit. This one is to incentivize companies to hire highly qualified candidates, so PhD candidates. And the French state actually proposes to finance their wages for the first 2 years. So not only are the companies benefiting from this highly qualified talent, but the candidates as well, they're ensured a job, and it's motivating them to stay with the company and, you know, be productive. So it's a really, it's a tax credit that we introduce companies to here quite a bit. And there are many companies we accompany who are taking advantage of this. We've already mentioned a couple existing ties between India and Toulouse. Here are just some examples of companies who are already present here. I also wanted to point out that the Airbus Biz Lab program, their only non-European entity is in India. So that just goes to show you that Toulouse really believes in the potential of Indian companies, and we're really motivated to further develop links between the two countries. Of course, you have Tata Consultancy Services. Niwi is an Industry 4.0 startup that our agency accompanied. And we also have Dualib, that my colleague Charlotte has really heavily accompanied with their development in France. So Dualib is an Indian company that provides authorized personnel near real-time access to complete telemetry. This is for improved operational awareness and incident management. So it's a company that's there to reduce costs in this sector, to give you an idea of what we've been working with. And then, yeah, so since 1964, both India and France have been working closely together on launchers in space exploration and manned flights. You have a kind of a timeline of other things that we've been working on. And I believe Charlotte actually already touched upon this 2025 cooperation on the ISRO mission to Venus with LATMUS. And yeah, so we've given you quite an overview of our local ecosystem, but how can our agency help you? This will be very useful information for you. So Charlotte and I are here to provide you with relevant information on the local ecosystem and tell you about opportunities for your company to develop here. We are financed by the Chamber of Commerce and the municipality. So all the services that we provide you are confidential and free of charge. If your project becomes quite advanced, we are even here to welcome you here locally. What we can propose to you is an exploratory visit. Usually this takes place over 2 days. And we can put you in contact with the players we mentioned, be it institutes, labs, academia, or any of the accounts that you might foresee as potential partners. As your project advances, we're here to put you in contact with recruitment agencies, administrative experts, accountants, etc. And then, of course, once you are set up in Toulouse, we don't just leave you hanging. We remain in contact with you, and we continue building relationships for you here with our local ecosystem. If you want to get in contact with us, here are some of the events that we have planned this year. Not only this year in Toulouse, but just to give you an idea of some of the trade shows that we travel to. So we would be very happy to meet you at any one of these trade shows. Or if you ever plan to be in Europe, even if it's not France, and you have a couple extra days, you can always let us know. And we can have you here in Toulouse and set up an exploratory visit for you. So here is our contact information. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. I will put my camera back on. to get ready for the Q&A. But don't hesitate to reach out with us. We're happy to set up follow-up calls if there's any further information you want precisions on. That's what we're here to do. We thank Crescendo for putting this webinar together, and we hope to hear from you guys. So I think we can open up the floor now, if Crescendo's okay, to Q&A.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Charlotte and Ms. Kathleen for giving a brief presentation regarding the space industry in Toulouse. I believe from the presentation is that it was very handy, and it has given the participants an idea how they can expand into the Toulouse. Now, we will stop the live stream and quickly jump to the question and answer session.